at some point in time, I do believe you decided to become even more immersed in the state of Texas, if one can call Houston, and I'm sure many of the other Texans don't call it part of their real estate, but here you are in Houston now.
Here I am in Houston. I love Houston.
Tell us about that. Yeah. I'll bet you don't like the traffic.
Oh, so, traffic's traffic. I think
well, that's true.
After a while, you just become numb to it. So I decided a job came open at King and Spalding, and I'd never worked in a private law firm. So I'd worked academic, I'd worked state court and county.
And you were on record with Simon that you were thinking of you thought you'd be an academic.
Yeah, and there had been a number of transitions there with the university side, and so there were some transitions on our side as well. And so I had applied for the job at King and Spalding to be the library manager for the Houston office. King Spalding is a fairly large firm, 800 plus attorneys, 17 offices. Although it was only 5 at the time when I joined them. It wasn't that. It was only 2004. And so I got to run the Houston library. One of the funny stories that I had with my boss there, as we were interviewing, we pretty much finished the interview, and I think we'd done 2 or 3 rounds, and we're leaving. The typical conversation in Houston goes to the weather, and it's like, oh, and so we were laughing. I said, well, whenever I go back to Oklahoma, I just dry out, and she goes, oh yeah, I do the same thing when I go to Idaho, and I said, oh, well, my in-laws are from Idaho originally. And she goes, where at? And I said, oh, it's this little bitty town, and I just named the county. And then all of a sudden she was like, well, wait a minute, was it Montpelier? Or, I said, yeah. She goes, what, what's their names? Well, it turns out they knew each other.
Some of the folks in Iowa,
little bitty 2000,
Idaho, it's a pretty small place.
So, and I laughed because I made the mistake of then telling my mother-in-law that, oh yeah, well, I met Marianne, and she wasn't really friends with Marianne, but she was really good friends with her sister.
Oh.
So somehow or another she got Marianne's email address, and before I'd even gotten the job, started corresponding with her.
Maybe telling too much about you.
I was like, wait. But luckily Marianne said, oh, if someone's mother-in-law can suggest her son-in-law, you must be a good guy. So we decided to go ahead and hire you. And where I was telling my mother-in-law, I was like, oh, please don't do that.
So, yes, you know, at this point in life, need a parent or a parent-in-law to step in the way, helping you out.
Luckily, it ended up working out really, really well. So I took that, and I actually had 2 hats there as well. Jobs, you never do one thing; you have multiple hats.
Oh, I'm surprised and shocked to hear that.
I know. So I had records and the library there, and it was another good experience because with the records, again, you had computer systems that maintain that, and I still look at that and the way we ran it there. In the law firm, the client's representation begins and ends in records. Everything gets open, conflicts, and things get open in records, and then at the end of the matter, you close it, and then you have your retention periods for how long you keep things. So it was really a good way for me to kind of learn, again, the base processes of how things work and go throughout the lifespan of the work. So that was really good. A lot, and at that time, still lots of transition in what it meant to be a law firm librarian. Services that we provide, and one of the things that I've been very lucky and have also worked hard to build is good relationships with the other departments, especially with departments like marketing, because there's so much that crosses over there, and there are things that we do so much better, I think, than marketing does, which is not. And there are so many things they do so much better than we do, and it's finding those that that synergy between the two groups, and building good relationships, and it takes both sides. But I've been fairly lucky in having really good relationships with marketing, and that just opens up so many opportunities because they need so much. The demands on them are so high.
Yeah.
And they try to do it themselves, and they're really, their skill set is not in research, and that's not a disparaging remark to them.
Well, I mean,
They're more
your skills.
They're more
and
sales and marketing. They're more it's
exactly.
getting business development, working with clients, telling the story of the firm, and so because we had that good relationship, they would come and go, wow, we really like. Figure out ways that we can get more information, on this client or, on this issue here, so that when I go to the partner on this, we have more to give to them that they could turn around and sell to the client. And so we started really going back and forth, and it was business development, competitive intelligence, a number of things that were going back, trying to figure out ways that we could take information from all these resources that we had access to that were far beyond cases and statutes and primary law. It was much more industry information, much more intelligence on what our competitors were doing, and so being able to adapt our skill set from just researching and finding legal issues, finding business issues, finding opportunities that were out there, and it worked. I would get more calls from marketing personally than I would get from anyone else within the department, because they were constantly looking for ways for us to help them. And I know in some firms it's much more adversarial, and which is a shame.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute shame, because there's so much that both sides can really help each other with, and so marketing there, they would always go and talk about, okay, we talked to the librarians, here's what we got from X, Y, and Z, here's what we did to add some of our information to it, and I always laugh. I always say, whoever is the last person to give the attorney the paper, what the result, is the person that gets the credit for it. And it was funny because it usually ended up being accounting, because we would do the research, marketing would edit and get things put together to make that it would make sense, and then accounting would throw the numbers on and give it
hand it over to the
yeah. So
attorney.
we worked, and I forget, it was a huge client, and we did a large amount of work to get them in the door, and the managing partner at the time had got up in front of the entire firm and thanked the guy from accounting for getting this all together for him. And the marketing team and I are looking, like, no, we did the work. So, but and so we came at that time. We're like, okay, well,
works,
hey, it's okay. We know, but it.
Well, they must have appreciated you somewhat, because you were with King and Spalding for about 8 years.
It was a great job, and Marianne Fry was still there today. In fact, we had a long conversation this week, so it's. In fact, I laughed because when I came here after that, one of the things they were like, well, why would you want to leave? I said, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm perfectly fine where I am. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but we got to do a lot. I drove the IT people crazy, because I kept asking for more and more access to internal databases and technologies, because we needed this in order to compile these dashboards for this, or get these reports out for that. in fact, I told Marianne this. I said, Marianne, it didn't help that you referred to me as your internal hacker. So I didn't hack
about that
yeah,
term. Well, you were asking,
yeah.
so you weren't.
She goes,
you
yeah,
had
but,
access.
she said, yeah, but if they didn't want to let you do it,
yeah.
then they would do it because they would think, well, he's going to end up doing it and getting access anyway, so we might as well do
Well,
it.
maybe in a sense you were a hacker. You were just doing about it in a different way than some of the more commonly
Right.
considered hackers do.
Well, and that's one, over time, kind of this lesson that I've learned from all the jobs is, a lot of times the sum is greater than the whole, that you can start pulling pieces of unrelated information together, and all of a sudden you're looking at a different picture. It's like, wow, and so to this day I still tell them, so our objective is to take this wealth of external information and find whatever the linchpin is that ties it to our internal information, so that it just seamlessly flows from one to the other, rather than, okay, here's what the industry's doing, here's what we're doing, and making it two different pieces of results. So that's been one of the drivers, and kind of the constant thing in my head is, how do we put this together?
Well, I imagine you've just carried forward as you've changed now to Jackson Walker.
Yeah.
You must operate pretty much the same way. I mean, there can't be that much difference in the way any of these big firms goes about this basic stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Jackson Walker is a smaller firm, regional Texas only firm, which I think is probably perfect for someone like me at this stage, because you're kind of solid. You don't have these outliers, unless you count Texarkana an outlier.
I think it's a ways off.
It's a ways off. Well, luckily there's only one guy in Texarkana, so we're okay. And he spends most of his time in Dallas, I think. But it really I think really helps, especially me personally, taking a leadership role like this. It was a brand new role for the office. We took everything into a different direction, where it was much more about the people than it was about the collection. And so I really have enjoyed it, and in both at King and Spalding and here, I've been given just a tremendous amount of flexibility and ability to try new things, and it's worked out well.
Obviously be favorably impressed with what you're all about, because in the history of ALL, there aren't many colleagues from your sector who have led it, as you will, in a couple of years as president, and it takes a lot of commitment from your employer as well as others to empower you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember Carolyn Ahern was a firm librarian that I knew well in DC, and she described some of the support that her firm at the time gave her to do this, and it was considerable.
Yeah. The nice thing, again, both at King and Spalding and here, is that they look at someone like me and saying, if he does well, we look good.
Yeah.
Rather than, if he's doing that, then he's not doing his job, right?
Yeah, well, that would be the flip side.
Yeah.
If they weren't willing to give you this kind of power.
And so I have been very lucky, been supported, and it's been nice, and it's paid off for both of us. I look around, and I think I personally have had more press releases from the law firm about something I've done than some of the attorneys have had press releases about what they've done. And so it's been good to get that support. It's been good to give back, and even like the managing partner here at Jackson Walker, he's always going, hey, go out and make us look good.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's delightful to have somebody like that
Yeah.
with whom you're able to work.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have to do my job.
Well, yes, you do have your day job.
But I do have great staff that really, if I were to be hit by a bus
Yeah.
tomorrow, there wouldn't be a huge loss. They
Well,
could step
that,
right back in.
frankly,
So,
in my opinion, speaks very well of you, and that you have staff you have allowed to continue, or at least continue developing to that level of
Yeah.
competence.
yeah, it's and I enjoy. People may think this is funny. I enjoy it when I see staff get hired somewhere else and then they start running their departments. It's been really enjoyable. I've got 2 or 3 over the years that are now at other firms and are doing very well. I got one I think that is probably doing better than I am. I think she passed me up, and I was like, well, that's great. Now you can
More
give back to
power
me.
her. Yeah, why not?
So and this
you get your share of the credit for
Right.
what
And-
she knows.
And this industry is all about relationships.
Yeah.
It is totally about relationships. And if you can pick up the phone or shoot an email off to somebody and go, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z, and being able to hear back from them going, oh, dear Lord, don't do that. Here's
that's
here's what
something more
happened.
important than it sounds like a great
Yeah,
idea.
Yeah, we did that last year, and I almost got fired for it. So here's
that you do want to hear it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But it's and I mean it's not just in this industry, and I think this is probably one of the things that a lot of law librarians don't necessarily do, or don't do well, and that is start making contacts in other fields
Mhm.
as well. It's we are, put it simply, we are all about the business side of the law firm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the same kind of process holds true for academics and court
Certainly.
librarians.
They're all part of a big organization.
They're part of an organization, and they have a piece that ties into another piece.
Yes.
And the more relationships you have,
Mhm.
get out, have lunch with not just within your firm or your organization, but go attend a different meeting. Go get out. Go present. Even better.
Basically
go
show
after-
them what you bring to the table.
Because I think a lot of people don't understand the people really respect their local law librarians
Mhm.
because they have typically pulled their rear end out of a fire at some point by giving them the right piece of information at the right time
Well,
and putting it into context with what
That's
they're
what
doing.
we're all about, I think.
And so if you can get out and especially get out in front of other groups,
Mhm.
that's just going to help build that whole, that way it's not just one person that thinks this. You start building that and start showing, hey, we really bring a considerable amount of value, not just to law librarianship, not just to our firms, but to the industry. That there are resources, we are resources that are critical to the function, to the business of law. And the more you can get that story out, the better you're going to be.
Well, speaking of getting the story out and making contacts and learning things, one way we all go about it, and you've done it, is through professional involvement outside of your own institution employer. And I'd like to sort of change our focus now to a little bit. You're obviously been successful at it in the right sense, and you're about to become the president of the association. And I know that I won't ask you anything about your agendas there or what you're going to do, because you probably sort of have some agendas in mind, but you may not know what you're going to do until you get a little bit more into it, and that'll be another year or so. And but in the meantime, you do know what you've done up until now, and professionally, you've been involved in Hall, you've been involved in AELL itself, Private Law Library, SIS, and others. You want to talk a little bit about that aspect of your life and work?
Yeah, it has been, I'd say it's been as important as any of the jobs that I've held is having this, because again, we talk about this is an industry of relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and AALL has been really helpful in achieving those relationships, getting the education, getting the right focus, figuring out trends that are on the horizon. So there's a number of things, and it all started with Nikki Singleton.
Uh-huh.
When she found out that I was going to library school, and I think the statute of limitations is run on this, so I can go ahead and tell the story.
Well, Nikki's
Well, we
a
could-
good person. She walked.
you weren't supposed to without getting the dean of both schools. You weren't supposed to be taking a dual program. You weren't supposed to
Okay,
be.
everybody had to sign off
So you
on
had to
both
sign
sides
off
of the
on
street,
this.
so to speak.
And so I had been taking library courses on the side,
Uh-huh.
and had not been admitted to the library school yet.
So you're an illegal librarian, is that it? Instead of a legal librarian?
Well, no, they ended up. When I did have to go in and finally like officially apply, get admitted, and enroll, the dean of the library school, she was writing down things. She goes, well. And I told her I'd taken some courses already, and it's a 36-hour course.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, well, how many hours have you taken? I said, 21.
Just a few.
And she's like, no, you can't have taken 21 hours, so you can only take 9 without being enrolled. And I said, she goes, and I named off the 7 courses. And she, it's like, well, I guess we better get you admitted into the program. So once Nikki, who was the library director at the law school at the time, found out that that's what I was going to do, she's first thing out of her mouth was, "You've got to be a member of AALL. This is our association. This is where you're going to learn. This is where you're going to meet people to get jobs.
Yeah.
If you're not in this." You're starting off with one hand tied behind your back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, and so that was, I guess, 97, somewhere around there. And then just a couple years later, maybe 3 years later, when Bob Oakley was president,
Mm-hmm.
they, I was still pretty young, pretty new to the thing, and Bob got me involved on a committee for the Futures Law Librarianship.
Oh, yeah.
The Beyond the Boundaries book that came out.
Yeah, I remember
And
all that era.
it was the best thing that could have happened to me at the time, because I had a number of people from different, they pulled together people from academics, from firms, and from courts.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the court part there, and we had 2 years to pull this thing together. And we each wrote chapters of the book on how, within our own niche of the industry, where do we see things going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to write things, and I was probably reading it back now. We were going to have a reunion.
Be a little bit scary.
Yeah, well,
or you may have missed a few things.
Yeah, I think I
quite
missed
as
a
big.
few
Yeah,
things.
well, that's reality. I mean, who could predict everything?
Although did get some things right. I think there was CD-ROMs were big then. I think there was.
Oh, I remember those.
So there was a lot of things about
very cumbersome, but boy, we thought they were the state of the art. Well, they were.
It was much more about enclosed collections.
Yeah.
Still, I think
Yeah.
we still hadn't quite thought of, even today the cloud is still kind of people don't really understand what that means.
That's that pesky thing. Every
Yeah.
time I turn my iPhone on, they
Yeah.
prod me to put in the code to get at it.
Exactly. So I think we'd still, that's one of the things we missed there. But it was good because it got me in with just this wealth of experience of people that had already been in the industry for decades.
Yeah.
And you know, so I had contacts there, and they, you know, would point me to someone else whenever I have a question. It really kind of started this process of being able to reach out to your peers and feel comfortable reaching out, other than, you know, just a law live, you know, email. Hey, does anyone know?
Well, yes, in the old days, we
yeah.
used telephones.
Yeah.
And things like that.
So just this very specific, you know, being able to reach out on a personal level and get advice from someone, you know, that again was 20, 30 years your peer, you know, had been in the industry for that much time, and you know, and then be very willing to, oh yeah, you know, here's what I think, or you know what, I don't know this one, but here, let me introduce you to this person here. So it's a very, you know, it's there. I was at a meeting. One of the reasons we had to delay this a couple of days was in Chicago, and one of the speakers there had talked about there's you know, there's three types of relationships. There's the givers, the takers, and then there's the connectors. And there are I would say the majority of the people that I deal with at AA fall in that connector part. And you know, you give and take, but really they're more about, okay, well, let's make these connections,
more personal as much
make these
as
connections here,
business.
and that's been just really helpful. It's been able to you know, just really build upon the experiences of others and not have to start from scratch.
My exact same experience. That we are a collegial group. As I bill it, when I first contacted you and others about doing one of these chats on camera for our oral history, I say, you know, we're just going to talk like we're a couple of friends who happen to be colleagues, and which is exactly what it is.
Right. Yeah. And that's how I've, you know, I always laugh when, you know, people are it's like, oh well, you know, I would never do this with this person. I'm like, oh, trust me, there's, you know, hundreds more out there that you can work with, and
well, it sounds like you've had a good run professionally in all senses of that term, Greg, and we're probably nearing the end of today's conversation, but it's customary, because we might miss something, to ask you if there's anything that we've not talked about, or that you'd like to expand on that we have talked about before we conclude.
Well, I think probably the one thing that the big elephant in the room, which is kind of funny because we had a number of things that we called elephants, is the blogging, and that I'd say is has been something that, on a name recognition thing, has really been one of the best things I've ever done, and that's start with the 3 Geeks in the Law blog, which started on a whim with my good friend Toby Brown and Lisa Salazar. And Toby at the time was a knowledge management guy at Fulbright, and Lisa is their internet marketing person at Fulbright. Toby's had 85 jobs since then, and is now the what is he? He's the chief strategy and pricing officer at Aiken Gump, which is a very large firm, and he is well known in the industry, especially on the pricing and business side of law firms, and so it was really this whole blogging thing was Lisa's idea, and Lisa's a writer, and you know, she's a marketing person, and we were at lunch one day drinking Arnold Palmer's, so we every once in a while
I believe that has a tinge of something in it we won't describe.
No, that's just lemonade and iced tea.
Oh, it is?
So yeah,
it's
just
there was a little shot of something.
No,
besides
that.
It's I see the ad on TV a while back. I don't.
Yeah, where he's mixing
where
his.
he's having an Arnold Palmer on
It's
it.
perfect.
Old Arnold's in the ad.
Yeah. But Lisa had come up with the idea, and she goes, you know, it'd be really interesting because we come from we're all on the administrative side of law firms, of large law firms. So it'd be really interesting for us all to start writing about things we're doing. So it's not just a marketing blog, it's not just a library blog, it's not a knowledge management blog, but you're getting these little pieces, and so okay, we'll try that, and I think we've been doing it for like 8 years now.
Wow.
And it started off a little slow. I think I was the last one to finally write something on it, and but Toby now refers to me as number one because I've tended to kind of manage the blog more than anyone else. And by managing it, I mean when emails go around about how good or how bad something is, I'll go, you should write a blog post on this so people can know. But we've since added a number of people that write. Ryan McLeod, who is also with Fulbright, now Norton Rose. He writes a lot. And now Casey Flaherty, who is he's a consultant, but it's really on education, law firm education, teaching people how to actually do things correctly, and very well known. He's been contributing a lot lately, but it's that blog right there has been one of the best ways to get my foot in the door with people that would never normally give me the time of day. Because again, I've turned the microphone up a little bit. I write it with conviction, and all of a sudden I'm the expert, right?
And with, as you say, the volume up a little bit always helps too.
It never hurts.
Yeah.
So that's been one of the things, and it's getting your name out there, being seen, and I would say, because I have to laugh because when I was at King and Spalding, when I started the blog, they were really reluctant to to say, oh, that's okay, and I sold it as this. I'm like,
probably concerned you let something out that they didn't think should be known beyond the firm.
And so I told them, I said, well, look, I said, one, I'm not going to talk inside baseball. I'm not going to talk about what's going on here. Two, it's going to be more about the industry and things, and I will never mention or embarrass the firm. And so they were like, okay. And then so that went on for a couple of years, and they still all kind of pretended like it didn't exist until we won our first ABA Blog 100 award. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, wait a minute, what this blog thing you're doing? So then they started doing press.
To see some pennies
like,
for the firm.
Yeah, maybe we should talk to this, and it was funny because then they started, partners or people in other departments would start going and meeting with people, and all of a sudden someone would go, oh, well, do you know Greg Lambert there? He's, he wrote this thing here. We really enjoyed this. And they would come back and like, who's this Greg Lambert guy? I got to go meet him.
You mean several hundred of them?
Yeah.
All know who you were?
Well, I was in Houston, and the main office was in Atlanta, so I was outside out of
mind.
Well,
that's what the practice of law. Some of the big firms have become.
Well,
the equity owners don't all know each other. Anymore.
Some of these firms are 3,000 plus
it's good
attorneys.
Thing have limited liability partnerships and things these days.
Exactly, and good marketing teams to save them.
Exactly.
But anyways, the blog has been just a tremendous asset. It's been fun. It's been cathartic. It's our whole concept is we write about whatever is of interest to us. And if anyone else finds it interesting, great. If no one finds it interesting, that's fine. I've got it off my chest here.
They don't have to read it if they don't want it.
And it's funny because I will go back and find, because somebody will bring something up and I'll go, I think I wrote something on that, last year, and I'll look and it was like 4 years ago. And I'd look at it and say, wow, this is pretty good. let me go show them this. And it's been good. It's been good reaching out to vendors. We don't do any advertising on it. We don't take anything. It's all personal.
Yeah.
So it's been really good. And I would suggest that people find ways for themselves to have that sort of outlet, whether it's through associations, through presentations, through some, even if it's just reading and updating internally on current events, on trends that they see in the industry, because it just, people don't, everyone doesn't have the time to do that, and it may not be of interest to them, but if it's of interest to you and you think that it's relevant to what they're doing, and you share something like that, then all of a sudden, it's like, wow, I remember when Greg sent me this, and, he was like, and then you get that, well, if you find anything on this, as you're going through, shoot it my way as well, and then all of a sudden you become, if not the expert, at least in what librarians do very well is, we may not know it, but we can get you to it.
Well, as you
And
might
so-
put it in another context, you're sort of have a seat at the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's not really the old-fashioned variety like
Yeah.
we're sitting at right now.
even if it's video, which we do a lot of.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in this technological world, I mean, the opportunities for communication are one of the biggest benefits, I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
that we've netted from the digital revolution.
absolutely. I tell my staff, I said, if you have a hard time communicating, it's not from lack of resources to do it.
Yeah.
And that's on you. So find a way to communicate it. Because within our team, we will email, which is, that's pretty standard.
I think
But
people
now we got
still use
instant
it.
messaging. We have all of our meetings, and we have
Mhm.
4 different offices here that I have staff in, and we do all of our meetings on video. It's
Mhm.
at the desktop, and
Yeah.
so our phones have one over in the corner there are video phones.
Oh,
So
okay.
when you call internally, you got a camera there,
Mhm.
and I found that to be very good at, one, keeping someone on task so they're not typing on
They're
the
not
computer.
doing something they
You're-
shouldn't be while they
you're-
should be paying attention.
Yeah, and I found that it gets people on and off the phone quicker. It gets the message out,
Good.
and then you're done. There's not because you're seeing their face, the visual cues are there as
Mhm.
well. So it's been great.
great.
So it's like I said, the resources are there for you to communicate in any way that you feel comfortable with. It's just you've got to do it.
Well, I think on that little piece of advice, Greg, I should probably thank you for spending this time this morning. And
Well, thank you very
it's
much.
not often I get to talk to someone in your exact role in the association. I've talked to a number of former presidents, but you're a future one, and
Thank you.
signed, sealed, and sort of delivered in that department. And I again want to congratulate you,
Thank you.
on that. I know many of the viewers who may see this will be delighted to see that aspect of what's ahead for you, and as I will. It's going to be a good experience.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it, and thanks for taking the time and asking me
Thank
to
you.
be on here.
Well, I'm thanking you not just on my own behalf, of course. I'm thanking you on behalf of Michelle Wu, Frank Kodak, and Dick Spinelli, our colleagues with whom I have the privilege and honor of working to put together this sort of history of what it is we're all about and have been about for basically the working lives of those with whom I get to talk on camera.
Great. Well, thanks to all of them. It's a great idea. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.